Live. We are live with Geoff Thorne. How are you?
I am great, brother. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I think the stream just got you started with you saying let's not do current events.
Well, we shouldn't.
We shouldn't. Let me start off with a question that is currently in the chat from Mike Edson from Florida, asking you, how was it writing Blood Syndicate? Was it challenging determining what to keep the same from the original launch versus what to reinvent?
It was not challenging in that way. It was terrifying because I'm one of the people who love the original Blood Syndicate, and the last thing I wanted to do was screw anything up. Um, the most challenging part of that job was Blood Syndicate version one took place in the early 90s, and all of the social issues that were going on at that time. Like if you were looking at an equalizer bar, the the ratios have changed. So it's not like those communities are not still under attack to some degree or to a large degree, depending on where you are. It's that the way that that attack is coming, the way society is dealing with them, has shifted over the last 30 odd years. So having to, we weren't trying to do a nostalgia book. We were trying to say this is all happening now. So the the challenge was how do we fit this into the now? And I guess the audience determines how well we did. I had a good time. I got to work with the fantastic Chris Cross. Um,
One of
that's
your
dream
favorite
come true.
collaborators.
Chef's kiss, baby. That guy's he's top draw, my friend.
No pun
Um,
intended.
yeah, I mean, really, we just had I wish I could. I don't wish this. I'm glad it wasn't. I had a ball. I want to do more. I'm waiting for them to pull the trigger on season two. I have many more plans, my friend. Um,
No
yeah,
word
it
on
was great.
that. No word on a season two.
Listen, they're doing right now. They're releasing. It's I think it's dropped its first issue, Shadow Cabinet. So I know there were a lot of plans in the works when I was making. When I shouldn't say I. When we were making Blood Syndicate season one, and there was a lot of stuff going on at DC Comics. I don't know if they remember, or if they ever knew, but DC was in a lot of upheaval for the entire time that I was there. Through
Yeah,
Green Lantern, people were quitting, the company was being bought and sold, people were being fired. It was a mess backstage. Most of
I
it didn't
remember.
trickle. Most of, most of it didn't trickle down to the writers in any meaningful way, but large scale plans mostly got derailed and reshaped into something else that the public will never know about. There were whole bunches of things that obviously got scrapped. And now we're in the aftermath of doing whatever that new thing was that they came up with, which you're seeing now. To say all that, to say there were a lot of things that were meant to go on with Milestone and DC that I don't know
Yeah.
were still in the mix. So um, I hope I get that call, but I don't know what the new plans are. So the things I plan to do with Blood Syndicate in a second season, so called, might not fit at all with the
What
new
they wanted.
what the new direction is, and that's up to them. So they know I'm here. I'm ready to go. I want to work with Cross anytime he wants to work with me. I definitely there are characters I didn't get to introduce yet that I have plans on how to do that. So, but I don't know how it all fits in with the new status quo. So send them some letters, buy a bunch of the hard copy, tell these people they want Jeff back in the driver's seat. Let's go.
Let me ask
So,
you something relating to that. Like
okay.
when you take over a book that with this kind of following, and you know it was created by the late great Dwayne McDuffie, what's the pressure like?
I love Dwayne. I knew Dwayne. He was a friend of mine. Um, um, my goal as a comic book writer specifically is very much do never do anything Dwayne wouldn't enjoy.
Okay.
He was truly a great man, a massive talent that um, his views on how to approach all this absolutely inform very much how I approach all this. If he'd only been 10 years older, I would have called him my mentor but because we were just a couple of years apart,
Yeah.
you know. Um, eh, eh, I feel the weight of milestone every time I work on any milestone, anything. I feel but not as pressure, just as like if you trained all your life to be an astronaut and they finally let you go to the moon,
Yeah.
right? Like that.
I've asked this question many times throughout various people who have worked with Dwayne. How smart was Dwayne?
Dwayne was the smartest person you've ever met. Dwayne had an IQ, I think, above 160. Dwayne could have had a gigantic career making weapons for the military had he wished to do so. Um, he was literally the smartest human being I've ever met, and most of my friends are really wicked, crazy smart, and at least two of them are genius class, and he is above that. Um,
Jesus.
I've told this before, but I asked him one time, I was like, so when you're talking to the rest of us, is it like you're in a room full of kindergartners all the time? And he's like, yeah, pretty much. Why do
Oh
you think
my
I'm
god.
smiling so much? Which, because his temperament he wasn't, he was I wouldn't say jolly. He saw the humor in the world. So another kind of person would have been irritated by all these dim bulbs running around and asking him stupid questions all the time. It clearly just amused the hell out of him. So, no, he was great. He was great.
Another person would have been like Reed Richards, just cranky
Yeah,
all
he's
the
the
time.
opposite of that. He's more like Doctor Who. He's more like David Tennant's Doctor Who.
I was talking to Sean McLaughlin once about working with Dwayne on Justice League Unlimited, and apparently somebody from higher up said something like, well, you can't do this because the laws of physics, blah, 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 blah. And Dwayne just went, physics.
Oh, really? Would you
Really?
like to discuss physics with me?
That was my second master's degree.
Yeah, don't mess with the big dog, kids. No, no. But yeah, I mean, Dwayne's. I wouldn't even say his shadow. His star burns brightly in the firmament, and everyone who's ever worked with that guy, who's had the privilege of working with that guy on anything, knows it. You leave a wake behind you in life. The wake behind Dwayne is nothing but I wish he was still here. Thank God I got to work with him and to know him in real life. You know, a literal physical giant and also
Yeah.
a giant of an intellect and a giant spirit.
Wasn't he like
And
six
I'm not
nine or
nice
something?
about that stuff. I'm not saying that because he's gone and you're supposed to say nice things. Like he one in a million. That guy was one in a million.
Yeah. That's great. Let's talk about so for those of you who are joining right now, I'm with Geoff Thorne, former writer of Green Lantern, current
Ah,
writer of current writer of X Force. At some point today in this live stream, I will be flashing on the screen a bunch of characters
oh Lord.
that Geoff has not seen in advance.
True.
I
It's
promise
true.
you, Geoff has not seen this in advance. Taken from suggestions from some cube viewers, and Geoff has to come up with an elevator
Pitches.
pitch for each of them on the spot, and some of them are pretty far out.
Let's go,
Although,
baby.
although I think you will like a couple of them.
I do. It sounds like fun, actually.
So, um, X Force. Can you
Yes.
talk to me about how that gig came about?
The way the gig came about was I found out that Tom had asked me to do something a long time ago for, I guess there's a Marvel Unlimited digital only line of comics. And at that time I was like, web, I don't know how to do that. Thank you for thinking of me, but no, thank you. Right. And then quite a long time later, I found out, oh, they're about to shift away. They're shifting editorial staff. Tom's leaving the Avengers and coming over to X-Men. Now, I didn't have any relationship with Jordan White, but I had this one contact with Tom Brevoort. So I just said, hey, I know all of your big dogs, all the big stars are already diving all over you to get a chance to jump on the X. But I had this really weird Forge idea you might want to hear about. And he's like, sure, hit me. So I hit him with the idea. He's like, that sounds cool because it was going to be a mini. As you will hear in the story of Geoff, most of my pitches start out as Vertigo style miniseries. Okay. This is one more of those. He said, that sounds really dope. But based on what our plans are, we'll probably do that in the second volley because Forge is not a lead. He's not a marquee character. But I think we'll throw you a miniseries probably in the beginning of the second year of this. So
Yeah.
get it all set up. We'll pull the trigger when it's time. Right. Cool. That's a great response from a group editor. Awesome. Right. And then I forgot about it. And then a little while later, I mean, in the sense of, well, I don't have to
Spoken
think
like
about it.
someone who has many jobs.
Yeah, I have a lot of jobs. So I
Yeah.
was like, okay, cool. That can sit on the shelf till he calls me. Right. And then many months later, I guess once they really got their wheels under them on what the new era was going to be, apparently he had been talking to Mark Basso, who is my editor now. And Mark had been the editor on X-Force prior to the big shift. Now, bearing in mind, I'm just like anyone else out in the world. I have no idea that the Krakoa era is coming to an end at all. No one
Yeah.
told me that. I had no idea that that was happening. I just had this weird little discrete Forge idea that I wanted to do. And basically, Tom says, "Hey, I talked to Mark. You guys should talk." And I was like, "Okay." And Mark's like, "Look, I like the pitch you gave to Tom. Um, what do you think about that for X-Force?" And I was like, "The Murder Squad?" And he's like, "Well, we're doing something different, obviously, and your thing is very different. So it's a great gear shift. And would you be interested in this book being X-Force?" Now, bearing in mind, what I pitched them was essentially planetary. So people who've read Planetary know there's conflict in it, there's fighting in it, but it's just as much X-Files as it is
You're right.
Avengers. It's, I would say, 60-40 X-Files, right? And that's kind of what I pitched. That's my sweet spot, which they've never let me do yet. But or he's like, why don't we blow stuff up? And I'm like, sure, we'll have to make some changes to the base concept. He's like, sure, sure, sure. And I said, but I don't want it to just be, I'm not going to write a murder squad. And he's like, no, 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 calm down. Right. So we talked it out. There are a whole bunch of characters that I couldn't use because they're already spoken for, which was fine. He says this preemptively. I don't ask and get told no, because I never really want the marquee characters. I think we've talked about
Right.
this before. I don't want Superman. I don't want, the Avengers. I don't want anybody, because all these fan bases are so fractured and so aggressive. And also the companies have so much invested in them that even without the fan base being a pain sometimes, the corporate side is like, well, that cool story we bought, can they all be elves now? Can it be a musical? Maybe it's a sitcom. Could Kevin Hart be Tony Stark in your story? You know, and I'm like,
Can
no,
I
that is not. I pitched you Game of Thrones. What are you talking about? Right?
can
I
I
don't want.
interrupt you for a second, Geoff?
Okay.
Because okay, so let's get back to this in a little bit because
Okay.
because we're talking about your character choices.
Okay.
When you say you don't want the marquee characters, what is the line that makes somebody marquee? For example, obviously Spider-Man is marquee. Would you consider Daredevil marquee?
Currently, no. In general, yes. Um, Between Miller and Bendis and a couple other people, they definitely pushed him up to A list, but nothing against who's writing it now. But I think that the light on that property has waned enough that if I had a good Daredevil pitch, I would not feel uncomfortable pitching it.
Okay.
Um, I would pitch Doctor Strange for the same reason. I would not pitch, even though I actually have a pretty good Captain America idea. I'm not going to ever pitch it. Um, I would never pitch the main X-Men. Never, ever, ever. I love them, but I, no, thank you. And so God bless Dr. Ewing for wanting to do Exceptional X-Men. She, she's got ovaries of steel, my friend. Oh my God. I would
Okay.
be happy to use them as guest stars in a book that's adjacent, but I don't want Iron Man. I don't want Thor. I don't want any of those characters, frankly, that headline Marvel movies. I don't want them.
Okay.
And same with Superman or any of the big dogs on the Justice League. I just feel like it's just frankly, they're not paying me enough for the headache. Um, I don't make any money on these gigs, and if they're not fun, which it would not be, there's no reason for me to be there.
Fair.
And plus, both of these big companies have giant catalogs of characters that, what's anybody doing with Firestorm right now?
Right.
I don't love Firestorm, but I bet you if they said, "Hey, we need someone to pitch Firestorm," I'd have one by tomorrow, like, and I'd have a ball doing it, you know?
Note to self: add Firestorm to the list
Oh
later.
dear God, you suck. But yeah, so that's basically
Yeah.
the line. It's just anything that you think corporate's going to want to put their big, giant thumbs all over. I don't want any part of it.
Okay. So back to your character choices.
Okay. So I had a long list of characters. Here's one character that I wasn't allowed to use that I really wanted was Pixie for some reason. I wanted to
Okay.
use Pixie and they wouldn't let me. Okay. I don't know. Do they have plans for Pixie? Did someone else have Pixie in mind? I have no idea. Fine. But what I got, all the characters I said I want to use, they said, aside from that, they were like, yeah, go for it. All right. And I think I wanted Captain Britain, and they said, well, she's paired up with Rachel Summers
With
now.
Ascani.
And I was like, okay. Like, I wouldn't say that it was an afterthought, but I was like, well, she was kind of going to be in it because they're a couple, but she wasn't going to
Mhm.
be part of the team necessarily at the beginning. And then as I started really
Interesting.
working it out.
No, that's interesting because you once told me that you would love to write Rogue, and as a result of writing Rogue, you would have to put in Gambit, but you don't want to
Exactly.
to put it Gambit.
Yeah. Yeah, I had some ideas for Rogue by herself, but I don't want to write the full X team. Um, Frankly, because the full X team is the core. It's like anything. Everything rests on the full X team. I like to be
Right.
off to the side, and if there's a crossover, then my team can come in and be part of the crossover and then go back to whatever the hell we were doing, you know.
Right.
But the crossover is
That's
about
fair.
the main team. So that's just a
That's
lot.
true. That's every crossover too.
Yeah, and y'all ain't paying me enough. So no.
That's a headache.
Yeah, that's too big a
Yeah,
headache.
Mike says he imagines there is less freedom on the marquee characters. So,
I think you have to be Hickman to have any freedom on the marquee characters. I
okay.
think you have to be Mark Waid, you have to be Jonathan Hickman, Brian
Brian
Michael Bendis.
Bendis.
You have to be Neil Gaiman. You have to be somebody of such weight to have any kind of real agency. That
Yeah.
why? Or a friend of the boss, I guess. I don't know. Like, I mean, that's what it boils down to. You have to be one of the cool kids, and I'm not interested in being one. So,
Well, speaking of Hickman, you're right. Like the end of Krakoa was like what? Like I
well, I don't know what the real story is, and I got to be careful because people think, oh, he's backstage. I am not backstage. I have no idea what went on in the Krakoa era in terms of that office and those writers. I don't know anything about it. All I know is what you know, which is Hickman had a plan, and about midway through, Mr. Hickman was asked to go. Or there were some loggerheads they came to. At that point, he's like, well, I don't know if I can stay past this point. I'm going to step away now. And everything after that is no longer his responsibility. So I don't know. I don't know what choices were made and why. I don't
yeah.
know what caused that. I don't even know if it was a rift. I don't know. I was not there, but we do know that however it ended is not how it was intended to end because the architect left.
Right. And
So
sometimes like I think people always think of these things as creative decisions or whatever, but sometimes it's personal reasons. Sometimes people just
yeah,
quit a job.
or you got look. There's a lot of conversation in the fan community about they seem to really think that it's like give me the horse, and I'm on the horse. Everyone does what I say. Damn you, and it ain't like that, man. Like you have no idea the number, and the higher up the food chain in terms of marquee characters you go, right? You're writing Spider-Man, yeah. There's some people on you. There's a whole lot of eyes on you. There's a whole lot of people who are like, well, we need you to do a Green Goblin story. The Green Goblin's been dead for 20 years. We know, you're doing one, right?
There you go.
And that's the
Yeah.
least of it.
There you go.
Or you spent a whole year building up this whole romance between, Peter and Madam Web. I don't know why. I don't know what that would be. But, and then they're like, well, we're making Madam Web a child in the movie. So you got to get rid of that now. Like you got to regress her so that it matches. Things weird crap. And again, that would be the easiest thing, right?
Yeah.
So who knows what was going on? The movie guys finally got their little grubby mitts on the mutants. They didn't know exactly what to do with them yet. Hickman's doing this gigantic change in the mythos of not only the ripple effect of the change in the X-Men was all of Marvel. Obviously, they started their own nation. So
Mhm.
that's like, we're now starting Latveria. Like, it's going to be different now. And
Franklin Richards is not a mutant anymore.
Yeah, exact. Oh no, well, Pietro and Wanda aren't mutants anymore. They're not.
Yeah.
What's his name's kids? They're not Magneto's kids anymore. Like these are the kind of things that happen because of decisions outside of the creative suite.
Yeah.
All of them, and more that you guys will never hear about because they're none of your business.
Right. For
And
those who don't remember, there was a short period of time when Marvel really wanted the Inhumans to happen.
oh yes, yes, they definitely did. And that battle destroyed my debut book Mosaic, because people are now reading it going, hey, this book was pretty cool. Why didn't I read it? Because you hated Inhumans at the time. That's why, you know.
My
But yeah,
God.
so all of that stuff is stuff that's out of our control. And the higher up the character food chain you get, the more of that is in the mix. So
Right.
I'm just not here for it because I know it sounds like a joke, but you're literally not paying me enough. Like
That's fine.
that's the kind of crap you deal with on a TV show. They're paying you a lot of money to go through that crap on a TV show. To go through the same exact crap on a comic book, no, no, thank you, no, thank you,
Right.
no.
So back to
So,
your character choices.
so
You
the
had to
character
pick.
choices were,
Yeah.
it was always going to be organized around Forge.
Right.
I love Forge. I've always loved Forge since he was first introduced. I have nothing against any of the writers, but once they said what his power set was, they immediately abandoned what his power set is. So I was like, he's just mutant Tony Stark, which is nonsense. So I wanted to really get into that. And I love Sage. Once that they took this, like, it's funny because, well, that's a whole other TED talk, but Claremont invented Tessa as a throwaway character and then years later came back and go, oh, she was undercover. She's a mutant. She does all this other stuff. And I was like, wait, what? And then again, because she's like third tier, fourth tier character, she basically became a plot device, as did Forge, as did anyone who wasn't one of the main X character, the main team, Nightcrawler or Colossus or one of that crowd, right? The cool kids. And I just loved her. So I wanted to set up a book around the two of them having Mulder and Scully style adventures. And then it turned into X-Force. And it was like, well, who else is going to be on this team? Because this is now going to be an action book, less contemplative and more. So we need some heavy hitters. Um, I wanted Betsy Braddock for similar reasons to why I wanted Forge. I just have an idea for her that I would love to be able to explore. And if this is the way I get my mitts on that character, then she's going to be in the book. And that brings Rachel along. And Rachel had just gone through some fairly significant character development. Aside from being with Betsy, Professor X had murdered her at the time. I was like, oh, cool. Right. And then I wanted to grab up Surge because I love the new X-Men when they first came out, and very little's been done with them ever. So I wanted Surge, and Tank is Tank. Um, my beautiful Tank.
Who
And
is Tank?
that's none of your damn business. Why is Tank? Where is Tank? Um, but and then it was just a matter of, okay, how do we get the other characters? This was I don't know if it was a miscommunication or not. The way Forge works is he grabs who he needs to solve the problem. So there's a
Mhm.
core group of mutants, obviously, the team that you see, but depending on how far the story gets to run, you will see them grab up like they did in issue one. They grabbed Deadpool because Forge wanted Deadpool for some reason. Um, uh, Surge is actually drafted onto the team. She was not initially approached to be part of the team, but upon seeing her, it's like, oh, nope, you're needed. You're with us now. Right. So that's how the team came about. Obviously, you see my backdrop. After that issue, there's a bit of fracturing going on because that's what happens in the X-Men. Planes blow up and the people quit the team all the time. And folks die. Um, and we'll see what the fallout is from all of that there.
Let me ask you something. X Force #1 came out, I believe, in the same month as Deadpool and Wolverine,
Yeah,
right? And Deadpool, front and center on that cover. Your choice, or Marvel made you do it?
made me do it is very strong. Um,
Asked you to do it.
when we were talking about guest stars, um, okay, this is a little bit behind the curtain. I always choose characters that are characters I like. By definition, I want to write this story about these people. But these people may not be what the company's like. Well, these guys are. I mean, who's showing up for Forge, Geoff? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't care. You guys bought it. I want to write about Forge, right? So they could have said, hey, Cable or Thor. Can Thor be an issue one, or whoever? And and their idea is they didn't want to just put Deadpool on the cover as sort of a marketing ploy. Um, you could have done variants, or you could have done that across the line. Oh, this month Deadpool and Wolverine's coming out. Every Marvel book has a Deadpool cover, right? They could have done that. There's a how do you feel about it in integrating him into the story? And I was like, it's funny you should mention that because the villain I'm fighting, there's something I've always thought about Deadpool's powers. This will be great, right? And they're like, really? And I'm like, listen, I try not to say no. Like my goal is to everyone be happy, right? So that when I do say no to something, you guys take me seriously,
Right.
right? So it was less of a command and more of an ask, and me giving it about 10 minutes thought and going, yeah, that'll work. So, but the thing with Deadpool is I don't really like Deadpool that much. So
I was
I,
waiting for that.
I think Deadpool's a flavor. I don't think Deadpool's the meal. And a lot of people think Deadpool's the meal. So Deadpool, if again, in the fullness of time, what we have now established is Deadpool is very unhappy with Forge. That's all I'm going
Okay.
to say. Deadpool is not part of X Force, and he does not like Forge at all anymore. Okay.
I mean, I do have to say the marketing power of Deadpool is very strong because I could have used any thumbnail to promote our live stream.
Sure.
And that's the one I chose because I'm like,
Listen,
Deadpool.
it's a business. I'm not, there's no character. I think there's only a couple of characters that I would have just said, put my foot down. I don't care. I can't do it. Um, I don't know how to write that character in a way that would make you guys happy. And that's why I would not put them in the book. I don't I'm not a writer who's like, oh, I hate that character. Let me put them in my book so I can show everybody how awful they are, and that's why they suck. Like I just don't write them. I don't want to write them.
Right.
I don't want to include them. So, but with a character like Deadpool, I don't have any giant negative feelings about him. He's just not my favorite. So just for me, I don't know if I could write him in a sustained way. Like if he had just been on the team, I don't know if I could have accomplished that. Like the kind of sense of humor Deadpool is a very specific flavor, and to get it right, you have to get it right. I think I was
Right.
able to do it for the 8 pages he was on, but I don't know that I could have sustained that for any length of real time. I don't think I'm the guy for that.
I mean, we talk about you writing characters that you like. It is, and I will remind everyone who might have forgotten or might be tuning into your interviews for the first time, you do not like Hal Jordan,
Nope.
but you wrote him,
I wrote him damn well too.
and you wrote him damn well.
No, listen, I don't like
It's not like you
how
wrote him getting his ass kicked.
no, I did and I think if I have a pet peeve about looking back on it, I've retroactively looked at some of the commentary about the book. There are a lot of people who clearly never read it and said that I went after Hal and emasculated Hal and did all these horrible things to Hal. And I'm like, no, I did not. As I said, I'm a professional writer. I don't like Magneto. Here's a better example. I actively dislike the character of Magneto, like to the point where I should never be allowed to write Magneto for any length of time. That's the joke. But in reality, Marvel has established Magneto's current canon position as being whatever, he's on the side of the angels, right? And we all agree that Magneto's a good guy now. Okay. I'm not gonna, in my book, he's secretly a monster and he's got all these subplots going and he's evil. And I'm just gonna use him as little as I possibly can and get him the hell out of there. Right.
Right.
So with Hal, Green Lantern, whether I personally like it or not, he is the marquee face of the Green Lantern book. But I was not hired to write that.
Mhm.
I pitched them a story about again, a small miniseries about John Stewart. but but very specifically, part of my brief was shake this up, break things without repairing many of them, or if you repair them so that they're really not that,
Right.
right? Um, the whole thing with Hal losing his homemade ring. I didn't care about that homemade ring. Editorial said, break that freaking ring. Destroy that homemade willpower only ring. Get rid of it. Okay, it gone, boss. Things like that. I'm not blaming anybody or shoving anything aside. It's just there's a difference between a fan who actively dislikes that character aggressively. Hal Jordan sucks and will always suck no matter who's writing him. But and the guy who has to write Hal Jordan as part of his job,
Right.
right? And anyone who can't understand that that's the difference between a professional and an amateur needs to sit down and be quiet. You're still a
It's tr-
child.
it's true. It's
So,
true. Getting back to X-Force, I have a
yeah.
question that actually relates to your Green Lantern run,
Okay.
which is, as you mentioned, your Green Lantern run, you proposed a small John Stewart
Oh, yeah.
miniseries that you can actually find within that run,
Sort of. Yeah.
sort
Like
of.
there's basically one issue where we sort of did sort of what I had planned for the whole John Stewart thing.
Right.
Um,
But then it expanded because of the things that needed to be done.
all kinds of
Same
craziness. Yeah.
same thing happened here.
No, quite different. And I have to say, Mark, nothing against any of my other editors, and certainly I've worked with some very good people, but Mark and I are much more synced than I've been on any other project. I would say maybe Chris on Blood Syndicate and I were pretty well synced up, but I think it was Chris. Nah, I'm screwed up. Um, but but let me put it like this. I had a really good time on Blood Syndicate. It was a very smooth ride on all sides, and the only thing smoother now has been X Force. Mark and I are. I have a Mark's great. I have a great time, and great doesn't mean he lets me do whatever I want. We bang heads a lot. There's a whole bunches of things that are not in the book because Mark's like, yeah, you're not doing that, you know. But I am though. It's like, no, no, you're really not, And here's why. And I don't always agree, but the relationship is such a good back and forth that I know that there's no ulterior motive. There's nothing else at play except we're both trying to make the best book we can make. So um, this time we got in early enough that the things that needed to be expanded or made more actiony or less contemplative, it was much easier because it wasn't as tightly plotted initially. It was more loosely plotted. Also, Green Lantern is that was like an epic cosmic scale science
Yeah.
fiction novel. Like this is more like an action TV show.
No,
So,
yeah. The
just
moment you
different.
mentioned planetary to me, I was like, oh, I see it.
Yeah, and it would have been much more in some ways from the audience point of view, probably more slow moving in some ways. Um, I really wanted to explore all the weird nooks and crannies of the Marvel
Marvel Universe.
universe, right? Which I've done a little bit, but not the way it's being presented in the current iteration. Um, I've been using I use a bunch of monsters from like the 1950s, characters from like Nuclear comes from the 70s. Um, there's stuff from the 80s. Like basically every era of Marvel, I feel and every
Yeah.
location that's ever been used in Marvel, I feel is our playground.
Right.
That would have been the center of the book had it been the original pitch. But in this case, it's more like it's the backdrop, it's the flavoring of the book. So
Well, that's interesting to me because I really started collecting comics in the 90s when I feel like every office was so much more siloed. You know, the
Yeah,
Spider-Man books were doing their own thing, the X-Men books were doing their own thing.
yeah.
So an approach like this, um, the other series that I'm thinking of is Jed McKay had a Black Cat series a few years ago,
Hmm.
where she was stealing from the Baxter Building, the Sanctum Sanctorum, which the only thing I could think of was they would never have allowed this in the 90s, right? The Fantastic Four office would have been
Yeah, they said no, she
up in
can't break
arms.
in. It's impossible, and no way. Yeah, and
Right.
yeah, I
But
think also the X office is very like I know what all the other guys are doing. They know what I'm doing. I guess there was the infamous Krakoa Slack channel. We have a Discord that we are all on, and it's not I would say coordination rather than machinations. Like we get to see everybody's work first,
okay.
obviously well before the public. If I have a character or I'm going to do something and I'm like, hey, are you guys doing anything with this? Or if I blow this up, is that going to affect and vice versa, right? Um, uh, I sometimes intentionally silo my books or do my best to silo them so that whatever big thing is going on affects my book the least is
Yeah.
my goal anyway. But it's a team. You can't come in and be a prima donna like that. You got to be able to be flexible. So um we are all working together, but it isn't the same kind of thing as the previous era had a regardless of whether Hickman stays or goes, Krakoa had a very specific ethos, a very specific thing, a story it was telling that had an end. Like it was a beginning, a middle, and end of an era. Literally, it was designed to be something
Right.
specific. In this case, the we are not marching towards a specific single goal, right? It
Right.
is literally like, oh my God, we escaped Pompeii. Now what? You know,
So do you have like a Discord slash Slack with like the other X writers, Gail Simone, Mark Russell?
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Everybody jumps in and out as they see fit. We are all knowing who's doing what characters. All secrets are known to everybody. Um, uh, the death of Surge definitely hit the room like, you're killing our baby. I was like, just relax, you know. But
Just
yeah,
relax right now. Jeff kills people all the time.
I killed almost 7,000 Green Lanterns, okay? Off camera.
This is nothing.
It's a one little mutant girl ain't nothing to me. Okay.
Are Mark and Gail as fun to work with as they are to read?
I enjoy them. They're all smart people. Gail's great, Jed's great. I kind of already knew the hive mind in advance. I did not know Dr. Ewing. She's great. Like you've met me, you've been out with me. I'm not I would say little or nothing about anyone I did not like.
That's
And these
true.
people they're just having a good time. Everybody, it's a very easy ebb and flow of ideas. Um, there's a little bit of X-Force is the only difficulty I would say with X-Force is that all the other books take place over long periods, long stretches of time. Like there's days to weeks in between adventures, and even sometimes within a book, it takes place over sometimes many days. X-Force, after the middle of issue one to issue five, that's about 3 days.
Right.
So that means a
I
lot of stuff that's going on in those other books can't affect um X-Force and by extension X-Force can't interact directly
right.
with any of that stuff because it's also compressed on our side that we're happening in between things that happen in your book in one issue. That's all five of our issues. So, you
I
know.
can confirm I've hung out with Jeff twice. He is exactly like this in real
Yeah,
life.
sadly, this is the show.
Jeff, why I haven't asked you this question yet. Why do you love Forge?
I like characters that have non-traditional power sets. I like them because they are the way that their power works forces them to see the world in a way that is unusual, right? Um, Forge's power, as I see it, is, and I stated it in the book, is once he sees a quote unquote problem, it could be an obstacle of any sort. It isn't that he can come up with like, well, these people are having a hard time getting along with each other. Let me use my mutant power to come in and tell them how to solve their emotional issues. He can't do that, right? But he might build a machine that would force them to confront their issues in some way, right? So everything basically comes down to a mechanical fix for him. And I thought, well, what does that mean? Does that mean that everyone you're looking at is sort of a potential component? Like everything and everyone you look at is a potential machine component. And that would be the downside of his mutation. That's another thing about superpowers. I think about, especially in Marvel, which I think of as a science fiction universe, where I think of DC as a fantasy based universe. I think
Yeah.
Marvel is a science fiction based universe. That um, what is the downside of this cool thing that this person gets to do? Cyclops. No one I think has ever discussed this, or if they have, I have forgotten it because I own all the X books from one to almost the present. Someone may have discussed this and I just don't remember, but he should be colorblind.
Hmm.
Scott should be colorblind. He can only see red or
That's true.
black and red,
That's true.
right? So that's a drawback. I would explore that. Like that's the kind of way I think. So with Forge, I was like, and plus we amped his powers up in issue one. What is that doing to him? How does he see the world in terms of bonds that are connected or not connected? I kind of saw him as the reverse of the Inhuman Karnak, where
Yeah.
Karnak looks at anything and goes, "Oh, I know how to break that now." That's his power. I look at, oh, that's the weak point. Ow, right? Forge looks at it and goes, "Oh, that's the weak point. Here's a mechanical fix."
You see,
Right.
there are uses for the Inhumans.
Yeah, well, I love the Inhumans, and I feel that they have done dirty by all players. My poor Inhumans were just beat to hell. But, um, but yeah, so that's why I like characters like Forge, and similarly, why I love Sage so much. Um, Nothing against other writers. I have to always stress that because the internet tries to make a fight out of everything. I don't know which writers did this, but she already had the best possible power, which was a galaxy-sized quantum computer brain. You don't need
Mhm.
her to be a telepath. You don't need her to be able to jumpstart other people's mutations. She's the most formidable opponent on Earth right now. You just have to think about what it actually means for her computer brain to be what it is capable of doing. And also for her, how does she see the world? Like, and I have expressly stated, she said everything's math. Even
Yeah.
magic is math. Everything is math, right? So to me, when Sage is looking at the world unfiltered, it's kind of like looking at the Matrix screens,
Right.
right? Where what's his name walks in and Joe Pantoliano says, "Oh, you know what? I literally am just looking at the people. I see this as people, and to us, it's just code. She sees the code all the time, right? And I just think that's fun. I just like that.
Are you happy or sad that Rachel Summers is not the Phoenix?
I don't like you're gonna love this, and so are all my enemies from Green Lantern. I don't like OP characters. I don't like Phoenix is a get out of the jail free card. So her being off planet is really the only venue where she could be heroic because if you got a Phoenix on your team, you don't need a team. Like again, if you look at what their power set is, she's a telepath who can reshape, she's a telepath and a telekinetic who can reshape matter at the atomic level. Everybody else is just drinking margaritas while she handles their business. Like the X Force is just the adventures of Phoenix. Any
Right.
team Phoenix is on is these are the adventures of Phoenix while we all relax. Because who can stop her? Who can beat her? It's ridiculous. Unless she's fighting cosmic entities of similar power set or greater, right? So the removal of all that helped me a great deal. And we're going to get into that in the next 5 issues. You don't I gotta make sure I don't have this lecturing tone in my voice. I'm just one writer out of hundreds, okay? But my viewpoint on all this is characters need to be unique. Both Betsy and Rachel are telekinetic telepaths, right? So on paper, that means they have exactly the same powers, which means they're worthless as a unit, right? They should not have exactly the same powers, nor should they have the same powers as Phoenix. Jean, whether she's Phoenix or not, her telepathy and telekinesis should not manifest in exactly the same way as the other telepathic telekinetics. All right. They should all be different so that when you confront a problem and you've got Jean, not Phoenix Jean, and she's like, oh, this one's outside my power set, but you're a telekinetic. I know, but you really need Psylocke for this one. You know, why? Those knives, I
Because
can't
we
do that.
need those knives.
Right. I can't do that. Right. So my
Don't you
feeling
know
is
they are the focus totality of her? I
she's the
forget the
mutant
line.
Iron Fist, right? She's the mutant Iron Fist, but only it's blades instead of a punch. Um, but like, so for me, it's like it's not so much a whittling down or getting rid of things. It's really try and think less of, oh, I wish my character could do this. Let me just add a power on to them. Let me give them another power. Rather, my character's trapped in this situation. How can they use their abilities to get out of it? Be
Right.
clever, right? And if they can't, then maybe they use some other means of getting out of it. That's what makes for, in my mind, a compelling story, right? And also means that they can be beaten. If there's no chance that they can be beaten, what the hell am I reading the comic book for? You know?
You
So I'm happy that Rachel's not the Phoenix. I'm happy she doesn't have that to fall back on. I'm happy Jean's in space kicking all that space ass that she's kicking. Like that's a good book. Phoenix is a good book, but it needed to be off planet. As long as she's Phoenix, there's no purpose for her to be on Earth.
you mentioned earlier that we have a lot to look forward to regarding Betsy Braddock, Captain Britain slash Psylocke, not Quanon. Um,
I love Betsy. I love Betsy. I love Betsy.
can you give us a
Oh God.
preview of what we have to look forward to?
Well, 1 through 5 are very run and gun. It culminated with a death and with a person leaving the team.
Yeah.
We introduced a couple of things, like little like who the hell is Tank? What the hell is Tank? What's going on over there? Why is Forge concealing his thoughts from his own allies? What the hell's going on with that? Like, Captain Britain's like, dude, take the freaking headband off. It's counterproductive for teamwork. And he's like, nope, sorry, not coming off, babe. Um, and what the hell is going on with this whole I need you boost? And then all of a sudden, Rachel can flex, right? All of that's going to start getting explained out or at least delved into in these next 5 issues. Um, I like Captain Britain because I've liked Betsy off and on for years. I was I was one of those who was very pleased that they split Quentin and Elizabeth out of the same body. I never liked that. I never understood I never understood why it was necessary. And they did it for 20 years. So there's a whole two whole generations of fans who think, you know, Elizabeth Braddock is this Asian woman, you know, I'm like, no, she didn't start that way. Let Quanon go and be Quanon and let Betsy be in her own body again, and it's fine, you know. And I just think that there's a lot of potential in that character that has, because again, if you're not actually on the X-Men at the time, if you're an Excalibur, Exiles, or whatever, you're secondary. So it means if you get pulled back into the X book, then they can do anything they want to you as to serve the story needs, which are generally the adventures of Scott, Jean, Logan,
And the
now
rest.
Rogue, and
Yeah.
the rest here on Xavier's Isle. Yeah. So I like those characters because you can play with them more. And I think Betsy, there's a space for her to occupy, and I might be the person who sees what it is. And she needs to be unique, and we need to resolve this Captain Britain thing. Um, Whether I get to do it or not, it needs to be resolved.
I feel like I've heard you say whether I get to do it or not, it needs to be resolved for many things.
Well, I'm not a purist. I'm not a literalist. What is it? Those guys, constitutional. I'm not foundationalist in that particular way, but I think a good portion of what's wrong with mainstream comics is that um, there's too much duplication of power set. There's too much sort of hand waving of things when with a little time and effort, even if you don't use the characters a lot, when I see why are there 9 Wolverines, right? There should be only 2 Kryptonians, Superman and Supergirl. That's
What
it.
about the villains? What about the villains?
I'm not a
That was
fan. Well,
odd.
some villains, their whole power is we're all duplicated. Like
Right.
Hydra, cut off one arm, 2 more grow, you know? Um,
No, but I mean like Zod, right? So
Here's what I think. I'm not an editor. I'm not built like an editor. Here's what you do with a character like Zod, which the corporations will never do because they're corporations. Zod is an event.
I agree.
Okay. You spend 20 years, 30 years, whatever, of Superman. No, 15 years of Superman by himself. And then, oh my God, I have a cousin. Holy crap, there's another survivor. That's amazing. It's an event. And then you get your female analog to Superman. She's younger, but more powerful, whatever. It's cool. And now they can bond. They both lost everything, and now they have a little bit of a family. Okay, great. One was raised on Earth. He's basically human. One was raised on Krypton. She's like, what the hell is this Earth crap? That's awesome. Stop. Okay. And then 15 years later, as an event, somebody cracks the Phantom Zone and Zod and a couple other Kryptonians come out, and you see what military trained super beings, the
Can
havoc
do.
that they could raise. And
Yeah,
that's a line wide event. That's the
that's
superheroes
true.
versus the Kryptonians when the superheroes getting their butt kicked a lot. And then
Zod makes them too much money.
right. And then it's solved and they go away.
You're right.
And then something else happens, right? But they'll never do it because there's too much money in them toys, man. There's too much money to be made. And somebody in the movie side goes, well, we want to use Zod. And it's like, well, we got to have Zod in the comics. Well, we killed Zod 5 years ago. Tough, he's back, you know. And also, there's some fans out there. I don't know how much this actually influences anyone's thinking, who are like, "But I want to see Doomsday kill Superman again." It's like, well, you need to get therapy. What's wrong with you? Why do you want to see that again? Like, Jesus, man. So,
Jeff, hold on. I'm
yeah,
just getting a call on
okay,
my intercom. I just have to answer it really
go,
quickly. I'll
baby,
be
go.
right back. I'll be right.
Well, look, I'm not seeing the questions, so I can't answer anything. I'll just sit here and look at the screen. Uh, Hold on. Let me see what I can do here. Do, do, do. All right. Betsy needs to be Psylocke again. Quanon needs to be Revanche again. She's just being written as a genetic clone. Listen, stop it. I cannot comment on what other people are writing, but I think they should be unique. I think that now they're split. I don't actually care who's called Psylocke and who's not. I just want the characters to be unique. I don't want them to be interchangeable. And like it or not, they have a relationship. They shared a body. So,
All right, I'm back. Um,
um, yeah,
yeah. So,
I answered that
oh,
last question. Betsy needs to be Psylocke again. I just answered
oh,
that.
okay.
Sorry. I'm just sitting here. I got to do something.
Well, okay. Since we're gonna ask a question from the audience, Mike is asking, without going into dollar amounts, how much more does a TV writer earn versus a comics writer, roughly
Are you
speaking?
kidding? Oh my God. Um, Without going into dollar amounts. I make 1% of my real salary on a comic book.
Oh, well, there you go. Okay. Um, One of the things I know I'm getting in a Geoff Thorne comic book that takes place in a shared universe is an interaction with characters that I don't really expect to see. in Green Lantern, for example, you had the Green Lanterns meet the New Gods, which seemed really, really, really obvious, except I kept wondering why this hasn't happened before.
They did the God of Light storyline, and there are a couple of times they've interacted. It just was always a one-off, basically.
It's just one-offs, right?
Yeah.
In this case, uh, X-Force is traveling around. There are variants all over, and they meet the Man Thing.
Yeah.
Are you just a fan of the Man Thing, or
No, listen, it's always everything is well, yes, but no. It wasn't because of that. Like I said, I wanted to get into the corners and the bottom underside of the Marvel universe. And the Man Thing, the plot of what was going on with Nuclear had to do with opening dimensional nexes. So if you're going to do that and you don't involve the Man Thing, you're kind of missing a moment. So we here's a good example of that. The Temple of the Dragon's Breath um was from New Warriors. It was an arc in New
yeah?
Warriors dealing with my favorite arc of New Warriors, the Folding Circle, which no one's touched since then. You're all fools. That was great. Fabian Nicieza is amazing.
Fabian Nicieza and Mark Bagley.
Awesome sauce. Um, and it made an impression upon me. So I brought that temporal nexus, that dimensional nexus, back from limbo, right? That's one. Then you go to Louisiana, where there's another nexus, reality nexus. That one's guarded by the Man Thing. Now, it was always going to be some nexus. And as you see in the book, there are many I could have chosen, right? I could have sent them to China. I could have sent there, but I could have sent them to the Baxter building if I wanted, right? I was like, well, let's do something we don't normally expect to see in an X book. Let's go hit up that Man Thing. The last time the Man Thing was in one of these books was way back when Claremont, Nightcrawler, and Margali Zardos were dealing with all of his magical background with the family that he lived with when he was running around Germany, whatever. And despair was involved, and it was a whole thing, and it was a one-off then too. But
Remember Despair.
but yeah, so we do that, and then we link that to the um Falling Circle, baby. So and then the other nexus point or dimensional rift point was from Alpha Flight X-Men, where Loki opened up the wellspring of power or whatever it was called, and they were all going to be linked. But if you're going to do the Florida one and you don't show the freaking Man Thing, you're a jerk. You got to show the Man Thing. So that's all it was, and that's what a lot like. I'm doing it. Annotations, free annotations, and you don't have to pay for it on my Patreon,
Yeah.
where I say, like, some of these images you guys, young people, may not know. Hell, stuff's older than me in this book. There's monsters, like the first monster in issue one, that's from like a 1950s Marvel horror comic.
Yeah.
That monster, Taboo. Go look it up. Um, and
You love continuity. That's the
I
thing.
do. I do. I think that these are rich. I don't think I like the canons. Like, I
Right.
think people get enslaved by the continuity. You're seeing this constant battle with what the hell's going on with Spider-Man, and a good portion of the battle there is about continuity. Did this really happen? Is this still true? You know, all that kind of stuff. And it's brutal because there's a significant number of fans who care deeply about character X suddenly not being there, or what the hell, are Peter and MJ ever getting married again? We like that. You know, we don't. We like Paul. No one ever said that. No one's ever said we like Paul. But my point is, continuity can be chains if you feel yourself shackled by it. But the canon is just so rich that you don't really need to worry about it. There's so many characters that are only in one book that can be fleshed out. Or a weird Claremont was the king of this, by the way, introducing all kinds of random crap that he never dealt with again, ever. Like, what? Chris, you know. Also,
You know who else is the king of that? And he would hate this if we said it to him, is Alan Moore.
oh sure, and
Like
Grant Morrison too.
you introduced the F sharp bell, and
Well, now in his defense, God bless the F sharp bell. I love the F sharp bell, but those were made for one-off stories in the Green Lantern Corps annual. So was he planning on bringing him in again for any real reason? Probably not. He was just showing how weird the Green Lantern Corps was.
Probably,
So
but probably shouldn't be surprised when other people use it.
was he mad? Please don't tell me he's mad about that too.
Well, I think he was mad about Blackest Night a while back.
Alan, look, I love that man. Pound for
I do
pound, the
too.
greatest comic book writer ever. But he was dealing with a corporation and he's mad that a corporation acted like a corporation. Like,
Well,
you know, sorry, dude. If it's not in the contract, it ain't in the contract. Like, I'm sorry, but that's how it works.
Mike is
And
asking who your favorite character is to dialogue in X Force.
it's probably right now a split between Sage and Captain Britain.
Not
Um,
Forge.
Forge is easy. I love writing Forge, but if you think about it, Forge isn't talking that much, right? I mean, he's talking, but the ones with the quirky ways of talking are Sage and Captain Britain. And Captain Britain is just like the fun part of this book is both Sage and Captain Britain were meant to be sort of, you know how in Star Trek it's Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, and they're sort of
Yeah.
right. They were sort of going to be that for Forge in my brain. But the opposite is what has happened. Both of those ladies are trying to take over this book, right? They're trying to say, no, the book's about me. And I'm like, no, it is not. Like, I think it is though, Jeff. And that's what you want. You want their voices to be you want their voices to be strong enough that you're constantly wrestling. Oh, I want to, when can I tell this story? When can I delve into this? And you're going to get a lot more Forge being Forge going forward. This first five was really like very mission specific, very run and gun, just get us into it. Um,
If you can say so, how many issues are you slated for?
I prefer not to say because people make if the timing gets cut off. Everything for me is three-part stories. And then I walk away or not, depending on what the company does. So I pitched them a three mini arc, to which they said yes. But if sales go down, and I have no way of knowing if they're up or down, um, I had a specific way of knowing that with Green Lantern, which does not exist
Yeah.
for this. So
I feel like the structure um when dealing with the Green Lantern office back then was a little.
it was way more it was more Swiss cheesy back then. Let's put it like that. But in this case, I just don't know. So my plan is
Right.
this: we've done book one, we're about to do book two, and yes, there's a book three at the end of that. At that point, my plan would be to change the book relatively, not radically, but it would be significant. It would no longer be what it is currently, and then that would be an appropriate time for me to either step away or if they want me to keep going, then keep going. So we'll see. But if sales go down, Jeff going bye-bye. So that's it.
X Force is 5 issues in, written by Geoff Thorne. And to close off our little X Force segment, before we go on to the game we're gonna
Oh
play,
dear
can you
God.
talk about your artist, Marcus Stone?
Marcus is awesome. He's awesome. I don't ever want him to go away. He stepped up. He had to go away for a like a wedding or something, like a real world, God forbid, a real world commitment he had. And the fabulous Jim Toe came in to do 2 issues, and he's great. But I think every writer is like, I work with great artists on all of the books I've worked on. But aside from the one shots or the ones that were meant to be just a short miniseries like Solo, um, at some point the artist has stepped away for whatever reason. And I don't dislike it. I don't dislike the new artists because they're always also great. But what you want is a continuity of team. So
Right.
because these are going to be trade paperbacks at some point, right?
Yeah,
If
you
for
don't want
no
it to
other
look
reason.
you don't want it to look patchwork.
Like what I would do if I was going to switch up, and I think we actually got close to that with Jim, is I would want such a gear shift in what the story is doing that it seems appropriate that we changed artists for this section,
Right.
right? So like you have a book drawn by George Perez, it's Doctor Strange. He goes into the dark dimension, and the dark dimension is drawn by Steve Ditko.
That's
And then
fine.
when he comes back, it's George Perez again, right?
Yeah.
That's the way I would handle that.
Yeah, because I like with all with all due respect to everyone, for example, who worked on Tom Taylor's Nightwing run, anytime it wasn't drawn by Bruno Redondo, I'm like, where is Bruno
What am I
Redondo?
doing? What are we all doing here? What's the point? Yeah. No, but I really love Marcus. His work is great. I always hope this with all of the artists I work with that I'm not overtaxing them. I hope I'm giving them fun things to do rather than, oh
Yeah.
Jesus, this freaking guy. God damn, Geoff. Like, really? Another giant robot? Was 20 not enough for you? Like, I
But that
hope
was
I
the
hope it's not
amazing
that.
thing. That was the amazing thing about Marco Santucci because he
Maestro.
you gave him like so much to do and he would still finish it
Dude,
quickly.
if I could afford him, I would take that man away from all of this and just make graphic novels with him. Oh my God. He is amazing. Jesus Christ.
All right. All right. So once again, everyone, that was Geoff Thorne with X Force. We are now going to play a game. And while we are playing this game, feel free to come up with your suggestions in the chat because we might be able to use some of those.
Oh dear
This
God.
game,
Here am
this,
I doing free work for both of these companies now.
well, I'm doing my very best to not pick any character that you would actually pitch for.
Dude, I don't care. I wouldn't do it if I had a
Okay.
problem with it. Let's go.
So,
Bring it on.
the idea is I'm going to flash a character on the screen, and Geoff has to come up with an elevator pitch. Doesn't have to be long for each of these characters, and I'm going to start with this
Oh.
guy.
What?
I'm kidding. I
Jordan?
wouldn't do that to you.
You
I'm
know
kidding.
what? Are you
I wouldn't do that
serious?
to you. No, I'm not going to do that to you. I'm kidding.
Okay.
That's just my cover slide, unless you have an answer.
Save it for the end. I can come up with a good Hal Jordan pitch.
Okay. Here's the first one because Cube viewer JD Schaffner reminded me, and I think you might have answered this already during the interview, reminded me that at one point that you actually had a really good idea for Cyclops, and then he's been wondering since then what it is.
Oh, I wanted to take him away from all of the X stuff. He was going to basically do back when Steve Rogers quit being Captain America for a minute. Well, one of the times he quit being Captain America, he came up with the Nomad identity.
Yeah.
And after Scott, after Jean died, and Scott was sort of on walkabout, and he ended up in Alaska, and that's where he meets Madeline and all that stuff. But I like that period of time because he's a character who's only ever been defined by his role as designed by Professor X. And I have to give it up to Chris Claremont, even though it was brief, it made sense at that time for him to go, look, I need a break. I need to not be doing any of this. I need to find out who Scott is. And the thing is, with a lot of these characters, who the hell is Scott Summers without Jean Grey? Like, who is he if he's not leading the X-Men? So what I wanted to do was have him sort of like go on a road trip, maybe him and Alex together, do a sort of a brothers, let's reconnect type situation. Like Alex is like, you need to take a break. No, I must lead the team. No, dude, really, you need to take a freaking break. I'm making you take a break. I'm kidnapping you, and we're going on a road trip. Here are some glasses. You're just going to be Scott. We're going to have some fun. And then they just wander around the United States. And one of the things that I like about Scott is they finally did this after years. I was saying this for decades. Scott is the Captain America of mutants.
Right.
Okay. He's been trained in a paramilitary organization to fight hand to hand without using his powers since he was what, 11?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So he's as close to Captain America as a normal non super soldier is ever going to get. Okay. So him and Alex wandering around, I envisioned them going into a honky tonk roadhouse, getting into some fights with guys, and him using his spatial geometry talent without using his powers, his visible powers, to clear the room. And just solving those kinds of problems and figuring out who he is in the world without that X on his chest. And then go back and be whatever it is, right? So that would be my Cyclops miniseries, with road trip with Havoc and Scott.
And he'd be colorblind,
And he's colorblind. He cannot see colors out except red and black.
which makes sense. It
Yep.
surprises me that that's not more of a thing. We hear more about Hawkeye's hearing disability than
Yeah.
anything.
And that's a retcon anyway. So, I mean, Scott's problem is obvious. He can only see red and black clearly. So,
Character number two comes to us
oh, Christ.
from Peter, who is in the chat.
Oh, I love Wesley. Oh my God. Okay, I actually have a pitch, but it's not for Wes. It's for his 30th century descendant, and it's called Sandman Beyond. Like
Okay,
Batman Beyond, Sandman Beyond. Same era. Only this guy gets caught in an explosion and he gets a little chip caught in his head where now when he dreams, he gets holographic impressions of crimes that are might be committed around town in the same way that Wesley did, right? And he has an AI sidekick and he goes around in the future using his dreams to solve mysteries.
I would read that.
Of course you would. I would love to write that. They will never let me write that.
I'm also going to say I would watch that.
I would watch that too. Sandman Beyond. You heard it here first.
Perhaps an animated series is the way to go.
Dude, I mean, I'm so here for that. You know, I'm already in the driver's seat right now, like sitting there. No, yeah, that's an easy one. I love that character.
Okay, so Sandman, the Golden Age Sandman. Do you love the rest of the Golden Agers, the JSA?
I have great affection for that era. I love the I My dad got me turned on to comics, and so I basically grew up with comics the way comics grew up. The first comic quote and comics I ever read were Flash Gordon, The Shadow, um, Prince Valiant, all the stuff he read when he was Terry and the Pirates, all the crap he read when he was a kid. My dad was born in 1937, so he introduced me to comics in the same order that he got introduced to comics. So by the time I get to Kirby and those guys, I was already sort of nuts for this era.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I love those guys.
Well,
But go.
I think one of my fascinations for this era is like a lot of those comics, they're very sparse, in terms of character development, etc. So I
Sure.
feel like there's a lot of room to explore.
There is a lot of room. And I think there's often a temptation to go, well, what was it really like in the 40s? And then make your whole book just about that. Like, and I'm like, yeah, racism, genderism, all of that stuff is absolutely true and horrifying. But, there were heroes in spite of all those things at that time in the real world. So why can't these guys be cut from that same cloth? Why can't they just be superheroes? Like there are superheroes.
Right.
So, oh, I hope that's not broken. Um, so yeah, I love the Sandman. I love the Sandman. I love the Sandman.
Can I also just say before we go on to the next one, Wesley Dodds, one of the greatest costume designs of all time.
Fantastic. Nothing, no notes, chef's kiss.
Next comes
Oh
so
Lord.
this is from Paul, who has recently read your Green Lantern run and loves it.
Paul,
The
where were
or
you?
the original stretchy superhero,
Um, wow.
who is not made of plastic, by the way.
No, Eel O'Brien was an ex-criminal who got harmed. He sort of has the Joker's origin in a way.
A little bit.
He's nursed back to health by monks and then realizes he's got these powers and goes out to be a hero with them. Um, hmm. You know what? You're gonna hate it because it doesn't utilize most of what people generally like about Plastic Man, which is he would be the master of disguise. I would treat him more like the Human Target. He
Mm,
would do detective-y, crime level, street level, crime level, stuff, not fighting giant supervillain types. And the way he would get around it would be he's indestructible. He can't he can apparently be killed by bullets, but obviously no bullets can hurt him. He can reshape his face into any face. He can be any gender, so he can sneak up on anyone in any way. It's a recent thing that like he can only be wearing red and gold. That's recent, relatively recent. But I mean, even if you kept that, he can still put clothes on over it. So that's what I would do. He would just be a weird street level detective, but he'd be also crossing over into like he'd do team ups with like the Demon, Jason Blood. He'd do team ups with Slam Bradley. He'd sort of straddle, and he'd be the one who would be the least serious,
Okay.
right? Because he basically realizes pretty quick he's immortal. Like that would be my pitch for that.
You know
That's
how we were talking earlier about characters with similar powers and how they should still be treated differently.
yeah.
Okay, so if I have my next slide right,
Oh, Ralph, poor Ralph. They've been kicking my man around so much. The best version of this book is what I would do again. Would bring his wife back to life and have them run around the world solving crimes. They were great. There no it was a huge mistake to kill Sue, but just reinstate Sue and have them wander around solving crimes. Like cool.
I will go on record and say Ralph Dibny is DC's greatest detective.
That is a fact. That is I he Batman is second to Ralph. Yes.
If, you know what it is, Geoff? There's so many Batman stories where he's being a bad detective.
Listen, listen. People are stupid. Batman and Superman are Swiss Army knives. Okay. Batman does everything really, really, really well. But there's someone who does one thing. One of the things Batman does, Lady Shiva is a better fighter than Batman. Sorry, she has to be. Okay. He's a Swiss Army knife. The reason he's effective is he can do everything at expert level. But he can't, just like Superman can't outrun the Flash, right? He
Right.
can almost catch him. That's good enough because he's a Swiss Army knife.
Right. It's like what's the point if what's the point of the Flash if
Right.
Superman
If
can
Superman
outrun
can beat him, then send the Flash home. It's ridiculous.
him? Yeah, my favorite use of Ralph Dibny is in James Robinson and Tony Harris and Peter Snaberg's Starman, where he just uncovers the entire secret of Opal City, completely independently of Starman, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I love Opal. Everything about Opal. Everything about Opal. Opal was
Amazing.
a great James Robinson, when he was clicking, he clicked hard. Like
Oh
those,
yeah.
yeah, the Opal is a great addition to the fake cities of the DCU.
No, let me ask you about that like really quickly because I do find it fascinating how some creators or I guess even some characters just drop off because if you look at the 90s, James Robinson is like in the top 5 to 10 writers
Sure,
of
sure.
that era. And now I feel like nobody really talks about him anymore.
Well, what happens is I don't know James personally. I met him like twice, I think. But for the most part, comics is a business that you're moving through to go and you're on your way somewhere else, right? So you get into comics, you kick ass at it if you're good theoretically, and you make a name for yourself, and then maybe Hollywood comes calling, or maybe books come calling, or whatever, and you go off to do that. I have no doubt that Mr. Robinson, had he not moved more into screenwriting and trying to get shows and stuff made, that he would become a perennial, like, holy crap, when is he going to do another comic book type guy? I think
Yeah.
he just stopped making comics for a while, and people
Well,
short memories.
well, as you mentioned, the pay disparity.
Yeah, there ain't no money in comics, y'all. Sorry about it.
Our next suggestion
I'm
is your own fault.
sorry. Okay, you're gonna love this.
Yeah.
Firestorm is the result of a discarded experiment of Metrons.
Oh,
Okay. It's just
do
one of his
tell.
like, whatever. He throws it away. And there are multiple versions of the Firestorm Matrix around. And this is just the one that Ronnie Raymond stumbled on. Okay. Which means that if they're in proximity to each other, they can exchange components like an atom, right?
Right.
And so some new god figured this out and comes to Earth looking for all of the matrices because they all do something slightly different.
That's amazing. Did you come up with that just now?
Yes.
Because earlier in this interview, you flat out said you have no idea for
No,
Firestorm.
I don't. I mean, I just think he's fun and there are things to be done. But if you look at his design, not this one, but the initial, the way he was drawn, he very much seemed like a Kirby character.
He did.
So anything that looks like Kirby is going to spin my mind off towards Kirby's participation in that universe. He just looks like a New Gods character to me.
Yeah, I remember when he was first introduced, I think the whole commentary on him was that he looked more like a Marvel character than a DC character.
Sure. He looks like a Kirby character.
So I just want to point out to everybody watching, Geoff came up with that on the spot. Okay. He's doing
so
free
stupid.
work for you guys. Somebody pick that
Free,
up.
it's all free. You go and play amongst yourselves.
Okay. This comes from
Christ.
Paul.
Oh my God.
now we're getting weird. Brother Power, the geek.
Oh God damn it.
created by the great Joe Simon, co-creator of Captain America.
Okay.
In I believe the 70s?
Yes, and he was used one time, I believe either by Gaiman or Moore. Or
by
maybe,
Gaiman.
Okay. And that was pretty much the only, what is he, a hippie version of Solomon Grundy? I got nothing. You stumped me. I don't even know. Okay.
Okay.
He's a hippie. He was Solomon Grundy in whatever era in the 70s. He awakens now, but his whole thing is pushing this sort of hippie ideal. But because he's essentially indestructible and has a bizarro level of intelligence,
yeah,
he's sort of not aware that life has changed. So he wanders down into some small town and starts, oh my God, it'd be very sweet. Everyone wants to attack him and do the villagers with pitchforks things. Then they realize he's basically a harmless, nice guy. He's sort of super strong. He's kind of indestructible, and he looks out for everybody. And very slowly, in each issue of the book, he sort of transforms this town that was like racially divided, ethnically divided, like rich guy on the hill is like Potter, Mr. Potter, and It's a Wonderful Life. But Brother Power, just by being nice to people, transforms this town into a wonderful place. It would be a very soft book. There'd be no villains, or there are no villains in the Brother Power book. There's just people who have been horribly broken by life, and that him being around, just being a decent person at them, ultimately forces them to solve whatever their problem was. I don't think you could sustain it as an ongoing, but it'd make a hell of a miniseries.
You know what's crazy? So I flat out said that when we were playing this game, I was thinking of you coming up with pitches for things that you might come up with. You're describing that, and I actually think that would actually be perfect for Mark Russell.
Sure.
Right? You know what I'm saying? Because I think that I think that's an interesting dynamic that you just came up with.
Vertigo's back, so theoretically you could do a Vertigo book like this. It's just, from my point of view, you need to have a company/editor that wants to tell a hopeful story. I mean, it's not like you don't think them up. It's just that someone has to want to buy them. And I think this kind of character is, if you look at the real world, a person who's all peace and love, and it's like, look, we can all just get along with each other. That person generally gets shot or killed or beat up by somebody, right? But Brother Power, that can't be done.
You can't kill him.
Right? And he doesn't get angry back at you. He's just like, well, you could keep hitting me, or we could rescue those kids over there. Why are you hitting me so much? Why are you so angry like that?
Once again, everyone, Geoff Thorne came up with that on the spot
No, that was a
because
hard one.
when I pulled up this image, he said, "You have stumped me," and then came up with something. Um, Mike is asking, in the spirit of brother power, I am supposing, do you remember the '90s character Major Bummer?
Yes, but I don't remember what his problem was. What was his
So,
power?
Mike, I don't remember Major Bummer either. If you can just type in a thing there, and we'll get back to you later.
Because he was really big and everything was always going wrong for him, but it wasn't my kind of thing because he wasn't
Yeah,
fight. Back then, I was very much a 90s guy. He wasn't fighting people very much, but it seemed like
yeah,
his life was just going wrong.
right. So, Mike, if you can come up with a little summary, that would be great. Okay, this comes from Peter. We're out of the DC universe now.
Okay.
Do you have an idea for this legendary character and his
All
dog?
right. Here's the problem. And I don't know if this was someone did a plant. So I'm going to tell you a depressing story now. I do not have any pitches for Tintin. I used to
Okay.
love Tintin. I love Tintin so much. I had all the Tintin books. I worshiped Tintin. I wanted to draw like Hergé. I love Tintin. And then I found out that Hergé is a freaking racist. Um,
Hmm.
he corrected his racism when it came to Asians. Uh, he was racist towards Asians in an early book that I had not read at that time. And then he met some actual Asian people and went, "Oh Lord, okay, I probably need to fix this." And then he fixed it with Tintin in Tibet, um, which I did not see the original one which was apparently offensive. But I did see Tintin in the Congo, and he
Yeah.
never corrected it. And I'm sorry, but it hurt my feelings so much that I cannot even. I got rid of all of my Tintins. I had all the
Okay.
original. Like, I'm sorry, guys. I don't want to bring it down, but
We will move on.
yeah.
We will move on
Space Ghost.
to
Well, you're gonna
Space
hate me.
Ghost.
Okay. So, Space Ghost is a superhero sort of between Batman and Superman, right?
Right.
He's like an empowered being, but he sort of functions like Batman, but he's not on a revenge kick, right? So, what I pictured was he exists in the same universe as the Herculoids and the Galaxy Trio. And that version of the universe is largely run by their version of mega corporations sort of dominate government, right? So it's more like there's a galactic council, but it is sort of overrun by the corporate interests that are around it. The Galaxy Trio would be the government sponsored superheroes, and they are superheroes, but they're the ones that the UN calls to go solve a problem. They're inside the structure. They do what they're told. They're patriots for their own planets and all that. They're not bad people, but they are part of essentially the military, whatchamacallit structure, legal structure, law enforcement structure. Space Ghost used to be part of that. It was actually the Galaxy Quartet. And then something bad happened where he was injured and left for dead. Everyone thought he was dead. And the thing that was bad was one of those like, well, we're going to blow this planet up now. No, I can't let you do that. I'm a good guy. Well, you work for us. Well, I actually work for the government. Who do you think the government works for? Kaboom, you're dead. But the beings that he was trying to protect on that planet were energy beings, sort of like the Organians in the old Star Trek. They used to be corporeal, but now they're basically energy beings. So laying waste to their planet didn't hurt them as badly as everyone thought. It just removed from the pretense of having to pretend to be physical, right?
Mhm.
But this guy laid it all on the line for them. So they revive him and they give him access to their old technology, which is still far in advance of anything that the rest of the galaxy is using. And they're like, you are a force for good and justice. We will assist you. You may use our now, what everyone thinks of as a dead world. That's now your home base. You have all this tech that no one else has, ghost technology based on our technology that no one can penetrate. Go forth, and you are now a knight errant. Go forth and promote the cause of justice. And that means that sometimes he'll be in conflict with the Galaxy Trio, and sometimes he'll be on their team, depending on what the conflict is. And they can never catch him because they think he's dead. Right?
I know you're a big fan of Space Ghost, and if you were to do a Space Ghost comic, what type of artist would you want on
Oh, Christ. I mean, hmm. I
would you
don't know.
want
Can we get
somebody
Travis
who
Charest to come out of retirement?
there we go. I
Can we
was
get
gonna say,
Travis
do
Charest?
you want somebody like Travis or do you want somebody like Evan Shanner?
Well, yeah. I mean, yes, of course. Yes. I mean, this is one of those things where you'd want to switch it up per arc. So like the more cosmic stuff, you'd want like Santucci or um what's his name? Or Travis Charest or uh uh Phil
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 Jimenez?
what? Yes.
Yeah.
Um and if it was more superhero-y than Shaner,
Okay.
right? So like that.
Okay.
These are
Mike
great.
Mike describes Major Bummer as he was given Superman type powers by aliens by mistake, and writer John Arcudi described him as smart enough that he might be able to cure cancer if he applied himself, but he'd rather use his brain to try and steal Cable. How do you do a series where the protagonist is a slacker?
I mean, that's hysterical. Um, I haven't read the comic Local Hero, but I would call that book Local Hero. And what it would be is he is he's a superhero who does the absolute minimum, right? He does the least he needs to do to solve the problem, and only if you can get his attention. And so it would be a comedy for the most part. And the idea is sort of like not the same way as Booster Gold, who's a little bit more self-aggrandizing and sort of, hey, dig me, look at me being a superhero. In this case, the guy is like that version of a slacker is essentially an extremely selfish person, right? I don't care. I'm just here playing my video games. Leave me alone. I'm sorry that building's blowing up. That's got nothing to do with me. So the book would be about him learning to care about stuff. So what I would do is I'd give him a sidekick slash girlfriend or somebody like he meets a girl he's trying to impress, right? He wants
Yeah,
to date
yeah,
her, and she's completely unimpressed, right? I don't care that you can lift a bus. I don't care about any of that, right? I'm over here, and she's a regular person trying to do superheroic stuff, right? She's like trying to help. And at first, he doesn't actually care. He's just like, oh, I'll pretend that I give a shit about these things because then she'll think I'm all cool and everything. But because he's around good people, he starts to inadvertently actually start caring to the point where at some point he just goes, like, he has a choice where he could just walk away and go, yeah, I don't really care. Brainiac's eating up whatever. That's my normal pattern. If they come over the river, I'll fight them, but that's over there. So I'm
yeah.
gonna. He has that choice, and he gets about 4 steps away from the conflict, and he goes, "Damn it! Damn it!" And you're like, "Why are you so mad? Just shut up!" And he like leaps into the fight and handles his business. And you're like, and he comes out of it like all depressed, like, no, that is not what I want to do. I don't care about this. I want to eat pizza and play my video game.
Question, Jeff.
Yeah.
Once he learns to care, is the
Oh,
series over?
it doesn't stick. It doesn't stick.
Okay.
I don't think that kind of person gets fixed right away. I think well, I kind of tried to do that with the Mosaic character, also an incredibly selfish, although much more aggressively selfish person. And the idea was that what I would like to see with a character like that is me personally, I like superheroes who are altruistic. I believe in altruism. I think it's a real thing. I've met real people who are actually altruistic, and I
Yeah.
think that they are real. But it is also fun to see a person who isn't naturally inclined towards altruism, and to make a decision that a lot of people might think a real person would do. Like when you see a horror movie, how many of us have watched a horror movie and go, why would you go into that building?
Right.
Why on earth would you enter? Look at the outside of that building. Why did anyone go in there the first time? But you know someone died in there, so why are you going in there, right? Or monster breaks into the house. Why did you run upstairs? What's upstairs? Go out the nearest window. What are you doing? Right? So you want a character who gets into superheroic situations and at least initially has the I think the fun of the Major Bummer book would be he's inadvertently solving these problems, these superheroic problems, but what we know he's doing is trying to get out of it. Like in every conflict, it's like, oh Christ, I don't want to fight Doomsday. I'm trying to leave this building, but everywhere he goes, Doomsday's in front of him. Like Doomsday wants to keep having the fight, right? Oh God damn it. But from the outside, it looks like he's being heroic, you know, or people are trapped in a burning building and he gets knocked into it by something else. Oh, Jesus, it's burning. Oh, Christ. And he busts out of there and they think he saved them.
It's like that Booster Gold episode of Justice League.
Yeah, yeah, except even
Kind of.
there, Booster he's being heroic on purpose.
He at
He
least is
just
trying, yeah.
Yeah, he's trying to be heroic, but he wants the credit. This guy's never trying to be heroic, and Booster would hate this guy. Booster would absolutely hate Major Bummer because Major Bummer doesn't want any of it and only gets it, and Booster only wants it and never gets it. That would be the fun thing. Yeah.
So we just so Mike says that this is awesome and it's perfect and he's glad this it sounds like Curb Your Enthusiasm and he's glad to see that his dumb question led to a good discussion. Dumb is his word, not mine.
There are no dumb questions. This is
But
fun.
so my question for you, Geoff, is when we've seen you come up with these pitches on the spot right now, including this for a character that I didn't even give you,
Right.
that you were unaware of. Does a writer develop that kind of muscle just through training, or are you born with that kind of thing?
I think it's a little of both. My friend and I, my partner, business partner and I, we talk about this a lot. I think there's a lot is made of talent, like innate talent, whatever that is. So if you're an athlete, maybe you are designed, maybe you came out of the box, you can run a little faster than the average person, or you can jump a little higher than the average person. And we would call that talent, right? Whatever your innate, no training, no nothing gift, fine. But so like, so talent, let me get it in there. Hard ass work, luck, right? So luck and talent are roughly the same size, and in the middle is hard ass work. So the short answer is it is a muscle you develop and you just keep it alive. I'm not doing anything right now that any writer couldn't do something similar. They wouldn't come up with the same ideas, obviously, but yeah, you could do that. That would be fun. The brother power stumped me. I have to say that surprised me. And then but see, but the other side of it is, I have a working knowledge of all of these characters, or at least how superheroes work, right?
Yeah.
So brother power is a good example. I had a basic idea of who and what brother power is. So it's less about, okay, let me brainstorm an idea. It's more about how does the character work? Why was he designed, right? Who invented him and why? Okay, and what's a situation that would most effectively show us that character, right?
Right.
So with the brother power thing, he's a sort of a one-off joke character. Gaiman made him more serious in one issue for 1 minute, gave him something interesting to do. It's very limited. Space Ghost is what we call a pastiche character. The Hanna-Barbera had the rights to, or at least they were in agreement with Marvel, I think, to do all these Marvel characters, and then it got pulled out at the last minute, and they were stuck. So that's where we got Mytor. Um, uh,
Oh.
Mytor was Thor. Let's put it like
Yeah.
that. I believe the Galaxy Trio would have been something else, and so on and so on.
Yeah.
The Space Ghost, even though he was created by, I believe, Alex Toth, um, he's a reaction to something not going right. And he's a pastiche character. He's a mixture of a lot of different kinds of things, right? Different existing things, rather. So once you see what those components are, then you can start coming up with stories where this either you use a fish out of water and you send him back to Conan times. I don't know why you would do that. I wouldn't do that, right? He's got nothing. He's just naked and he's in Conan times. I'm like, well, why didn't you just tell a Conan story? But for Space Ghost, you go, okay, well, what's he made of? Okay, what are the best stories? Pardon me, what are the best worlds to put him in to make that an effective character to look at and propel story engines at him, right? Um,
So the
yeah.
rest of my examples are also superheroes, but I did get one suggestion who wasn't, and I'll throw it to you now if
Go,
you want a
go. We can do this all night,
non-superhero.
dude. I love this crap.
Peter is asked me, and I didn't put him in because I don't know why I didn't, because I love this character. Gyro Gearloose.
From DuckTales?
Yeah, from the Donald Duck books. The scientist.
I know he is. Wasn't he Gizmo Duck? Didn't he
No,
turn into
his
Gizmo?
assistant is Gizmo Duck.
Okay. Oh, that's right,
Fen-
the big guy. Right.
yeah.
Um,
Fenton Cabrera.
okay. The Disney universe, the DuckTales universe, the way DuckTales is portrayed is actually reasonably serious
Considering, yeah.
considering what you're looking at is a bunch of talking ducks. Um, with hands instead of wings. They can't fly for some reason, and they don't wear pants, a lot of them, but whatever. Some of them wear pants, some of them don't. Nobody seems to care. I don't know why. But what I would say is I think you'd have a story that was similar to sort of a combination of Back to the Future and Challengers of the Unknown.
Ooh.
So the idea would be without doing the what is it what you call it, Rick and Morty. It's not Rick and Morty where they're jumping from dimension to dimension, but that every week, if it's a show, every week we're getting new adventure. We're getting alien invasions because the scientists built a device that was supposed to do one thing, but inadvertently said, "Hey, soup's on! Come to Earth and eat everybody," and then we have to deal with it. Or he creates a device that shoves everybody back 1,000 years in time, but only in this town. Outside of the town, everything's normal. You cross the town limits, you go back in time 1,000 years, cross back out, and you're back what you would have been. And everyone's freaking out, and you got to solve that. So every week would have been something. And but he's doing this sort of, he's a mad scientist or a
Yeah.
absent-minded scientist. So he's sort of accidentally stumbling upon all these amazing discoveries. And his nemesis in the story would be a person who works really, really hard to come up with amazing real science things. And it's like, I figured out that the difference between a quark and a gluon is this charge. I'm going to win the Nobel Prize this year. Right. And then every single time he comes up with, well, I invented time travel. What? Right. And so that's his nemesis. And it's just fun. And you have these adventures and he actually likes her and she hates his guts. Right.
Peter, that was for you.
Well, that's all for you.
Um, so before I move on to my next one, you mentioned the
Okay.
Challengers of the Unknown. Let me ask you, you would never pitch for the Fantastic Four. They're marquee, right?
They're a weird thing. I had a pitch for them as a show, but nobody wanted to hear it, and now it's too late. And it would require a minor retcon of their origin story. Um, but in terms of as they are now, no, I consider them a flavor. There will be guest stars in somebody else's book. Um,
What was the retcon?
the retcon was my first episode slash issue would be you introduce, well, there's are you sure? I'm so sorry. I talk so much about this stuff. Um, there's a
I got
lot
you on
in,
my show. I knew what I was getting into, Geoff.
okay, there's a lot in our fandom. There's factions in our fandom about race swapping and diversity, and there's a lot of very angry people saying a lot of horrible things about this character shouldn't be made black, or why is this character is never queer now queer, and I think that a lot of that fighting is just to sell cups and t-shirts, and it's kind of shitty to do that because it increases the hate.
Hmm.
But I also think that there is a kernel of reason in there, which is there is no need to race swap characters. Both of these universes have stacks already without making up anybody new of non-white, not American, not female, not so many queer. We could do with some more queer characters um, to use. You don't need to do that. So with that in mind, the retcon of the Fantastic Four, which was a very much a Cold War creation, was Reed Richards is trying to essentially create warp drive or something like that. And he is one of several companies that is trying to do this, that they want government contracts. They want to be able to. His thing is he's going to democratize space travel. If I can do this, basically anybody with what I'm trying to do could have put it in their car, make the car airtight and have some way of keeping warm or cool or whatever, and shoot themselves to Mars real quick if this works. Right. But there's another company, possibly one run by Victor Von Doom, that is trying to do the same thing. And they're in a race, literally in a race. There's maybe three or four other companies. And Reed, because he's an idiot, cuts corners. He's like, we got to go because if we don't get this, we don't want one of the bad guy companies to get this money, right? We want it to be us because the way they're going to use it is going to be to use to dominate other people, right? They're going to keep it for themselves. It's only going to be for the rich. It's only going to be for these totalitarian governments. What I want to do is have everybody be able to have a spacecraft. And the only way to do that is for us to win this and get the money, right? Get the backing, essentially. So they cut some corners, and that's where they get into instead of cosmic rays, it's a sort of a weird quantum jump thing, and it scrambles them across the multiverse. And when just for 1 second, everybody gets
Yeah.
scrambled across the multiverse. And when they reassert in 616, that's where their powers come from, right?
Okay.
But they crash land in different places, right? When they eject, they all come down in different places. So off camera, the other three found each other and they found out they have powers, right? We don't know this. We start on the Kawazi Reservation where Wyatt Wingfoot is from. And Wyatt is trying to he's having a dilemma. He's supposed to be the next leader of the band, right? But he also got a scholarship to Empire State University for football. And
Yeah.
he's really smart. So he's going to use that scholarship. He's going to learn a bunch of stuff, get an engineering degree, and come back and use that stuff to make the res better. Right. So basically, I'll be gone for 4 years. You can put this whole chief stuff on hold, or do what the council wants you to do, which is stay here and basically occupy your traditional position. So he's having a personal dilemma. A bunch of guys come out from like the far edge of the thing. They're like, "Hey guys, something is going on up in the woods up over there. We sent some guys in, and two didn't come back, and there's a monster or some shit." And holy crap! So Wyatt and the guys roll out there, and there's some kind of monster out in these woods, and they freak the hell out, and they don't know what to do about it. They come running back like they're going to get reinforcements, and they get a knock on the door. Reed Richards, Johnny Storm, Sue Storm, and a big robot, like a giant robot guy, like the same size as Tank in
Yeah.
X
In
Force.
X Force.
Now, comic book readers will immediately assume, oh, that's the thing. He looks like a monster. This is how he gets to walk around in this version of the Fantastic Four. Cool, right? Take us out wherever this is going to be. Now, we've not seen any superpowers yet. All we've seen is some Native Americans, indigenous people on their res dealing with this freaking monster that is just eating them up. They had to run away and get their broken and dead people away from it, right? We'll handle this. I'm Reed Richards. Oh, you're that rich inventor guy. What the fuck are you doing out here? Right? One of our things broke and crashed, and we're going to go get it. Right? Now, this is made oblique. I'm telling you this in the way I would talk to an editor about it. So you
Yeah.
can kind of be ahead of the story. Um, they go out to handle it. And sure as hell, the ground, the stones, the water, all of these elements are sort of congealing into this face and these fists, and this is a horrible thing. And then you see each one of the three members of the Fantastic Four that you recognize display their powers. And Wyatt is like, holy crap, what's happening here? Right. And finally, Sue captures the monster inside a bubble. Right. And it's a monster made of all of the sort of that's around. Right. And Reed goes to the monster and says, Ben, you have to calm down. Please calm down. You can handle this. Calm down. And as he calms down, all of these random elements congeal down into what we would think of as the Thing.
Okay.
And we go, okay, it's bad, but we can fix it. Johnny's fine. I'm fine. Sue is fine. You're fine. Let's just get you out of here and we'll fix it. And then the robot, who's done very little during this fight, opens up and it's just a suit. And Ben puts the suit on and they all walk out together. Problem solved. And they say, Wyatt, if you keep this a secret, I, super rich Reed Richards, will donate $4 million to the res this year. Right now, write a check. But you got to keep this secret. And if you come to New York, you got a house with us. And he's like, bet, I'll take it. That's issue 1 of the Fantastic Four. And you get the backstory of how this all happened, right? They explain to Wyatt all this, we were racing to get to the stars and all. We tell that story, but we tell it to Wyatt and Wyatt only. And then Wyatt has the secret. And that's issue 1 of episode 1 of the Fantastic Four.
Jesus. How come? Okay, I'm not gonna ask.
Welcome to my life, dude.
Moving on. You mentioned comic strips. Old school.
I hate this guy.
You do. Yeah, you hate this guy. Why?
Similar reasons. But listen, Dynamite Comics did what they should have done with the Phantom. Guys are going to get mad at me, I'm sure some. I don't like this whole white savior crap, guys. I don't like Tarzan. I don't like the Phantom. There's no way the Phantom functions in Africa. If you've ever been to Africa, this guy lasts 2 seconds. There's no way that the Africans would be like, oh, the ghost who walks. Bullshit. No. But the Dynamite, some years ago, they also fixed another thing where the assistant of Mandrake the Magician, Lothar, who was, and I'm quoting, an African king who left his kingdom to go be Mandrake's assistant and carry his bags around the world and have adventures with him. I was like, what were these guys smoking in 1935? All of the racism they could
all
find.
Of the racism, yeah.
Okay. But Dynamite Comics solved this problem. The descendant of that guy, Lothar's, I guess, descendant, comes back to Africa on an adventure with Mandrake and takes up the mantle of the Phantom. And I was like, cool, sold.
Oh, well,
sold.
there you
Now
go.
I'm watching those adventures. So I have no other pitch than that. That's the pitch.
When I was a wee little cube, there was a cartoon in the 80s called The Defenders of the Earth.
I remember.
With a theme song written by the one and only Stan the Manly. And the Phantom in it had the power to call on the strength of 10 tigers. And I was very disappointed that every other version of the Phantom did not have that ability.
But listen, the tigers don't exist in Africa. Tigers
I didn't know that at 3 years old.
Oh my God. But yeah, I mean, there's characters like this that come from a time and a place, and I don't give them the excuse that they should have not known better, but it's difficult for me to come up with, I would never come up with a pitch for the Phantom. That wasn't, they already did the only pitch I would have come up with. I think that's the best fix for both of those characters.
Our next suggestion, I believe, if I have the slide right, is a pretty obvious one from Miguel. Kyle Rayner.
Okay, I've told this once before. This is how I would solve the entire Green Lantern problem. I think it would solve everybody's problem. And when we get to the end of it, you'll be happy. Green Lantern 1. Okay, first of all, the Guardians suck. We have to stipulate that the Guardians of the Universe are jerks. They are assholes. They suck. Okay. Sorry about it. They are. But Alan Scott, when they try to get rid of all the magic, that whole Starheart thing happens. So we get Alan Scott. Okay. We get the same exact story. He's Green Lantern for a while. He's the magic version of the Green Lantern. Then he gets old and essentially he dies. And there's a gap. There is no Green Lantern on Earth. There's no one calling himself Green Lantern. He's just out. Okay. He dies at the appropriate age of a man who was alive in World War II. And then there's no Green Lantern for a while. Okay. Meanwhile, out in space, the Guardians have set up the Green Lantern Corps, independent of what the hell was going on Earth, who they don't even care about, right? Abin Sur crash lands on Earth as the original origin happens. I don't know why he needed a spaceship, but fine. He crash lands on Earth. He meets Hal Jordan. Okay. And this is what, 1955?
Yeah.
Something like that. Okay. And Hal is Green Lantern. He becomes Green Lantern. He is Green Lantern on Earth doing Green Lantern stuff. All the stuff you saw in the Silver Age, he does. And you have stories of Hal having adventures from 1958 to roughly 1969, something like that. Okay. And then he's called out to space to deal with some crap that's going on with the main force, and he gets killed. And the ring comes back and finds Guy Gardner. And then Guy Gardner is the Green Lantern for a minute in the early 70s to the 70s, to the mid 70s, to the late 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And then Guy sacrifices himself. I don't know, maybe he's fighting a Sun Eater, something amazing. He goes out with a blaze of glory, and he's Guy. He's the guy that we all think is a dick, but he has solid 10 years of adventures, right? A 10-year window of adventures from early 70s to the end of the 70s into the 80s. Okay. And at that point, again, the ring picks the next target, and that's John Stewart. And John Stewart is Green Lantern for a period of time. And John Stewart does his thing, but in the course of his job, the planet Xanthi is destroyed. Not because he's an arrogant dick, thank you very much, but because it was just one of the things, and it's too much for him. And he says, I can't be Green Lantern anymore. I've done my time. We saved those people, but at the cost of that planet, I'm done. He puts it down, and Kyle is chosen. And then Kyle is the Green Lantern of the 90s. Right. And
Right.
again, you get roughly 10 years worth of stories. Who was that creature that killed Hal Jordan? Well, that would be Parallax. And since we are stuck with these ridiculous emotional spectrum entities, now Parallax is threatening the Earth. And Kyle's got to handle his business. So he does. And he goes to fight them. He is devoured by Parallax, but, again, saving a bunch of people. It's a heroic death, whatever. And then the ring splits in two. And we get Jessica and Simon get half for whatever reason. And
Right.
they can't be Green Lantern without the other. They can both be full power Green Lantern, but only at the same time.
Like
And
the
then they
Wonder
have
Twins.
adventures, right? And the one Guardian who's not a dick, let's just say it's Ganthet for no reason, survived all of this stuff and went, okay, the core is decimated. We keep going back to Earth. They obviously make heroes there a lot. While all this is going on, let me go talk to this cop, Joe Mullane, Sojourner Mullane. I'm going to give you your own ring, because this whole thing where the rings get blown up and people die, and you got to have the battery. You need something self-sustaining, because the one weakness isn't yellow. It's that you have to keep charging the fucking rings, right? You're going to have a ring that doesn't need a charge that way. It's going to constantly recharge, but you have to restrain yourself in order to. It will always lose a charge. It will always maintain a charge. The more you use it, the less you'll be able to that day, basically, right? Go forth and do good things. Now, the thing I did not tell you is every time a lantern dies, the last holder of the ring has made a AI imprint of their persona and memory.
Oh, okay.
So the next ring holder is trained by the previous ring holder. So you get a buddy cop situation until the ring decides you can solo, and then it vanishes. And then it's
I
just
was
you.
I was wondering why you were killing off all these lanterns.
Look, it's a rough job, dude. It is a rough job. They're not superheroes. They are peacekeepers on a galactic scale. The only superheroes were Hal and Alan. Everybody else is handling some big stuff. Okay. And that's the way I would do Green Lantern so that everybody gets their Green Lantern. They get a Green Lantern that's attached to a particular era. And the thing is, with comics, when I say you got a 10-year window of adventures that can be had, that's infinite. It's
Yeah,
an
that's a long
infinite
time.
10-year window, right? Like the Justice Society was fighting the Nazis and all the way, like they did everything. World War II lasted 50 years, so like so that way you get everyone gets an era, everyone hands off, and maybe they don't always die. Like John gets to step away, or
Yeah.
you know, uh, I'm not trying to hurt Hal Jordan. I just don't like him. So give him a good ending. But whatever it is, he's no longer the Green Lantern. He gets shunted to another dimension, or he gets transformed into a being of pure will. Who cares? He doesn't get the ring, and it has to go find somebody else. But we still get Hal because Hal's training the next guy, and so on. Right.
Great.
So that's the way I would do it. I think it solves everybody's problems, and also let everyone take a breather for a minute. So, like, if you're sick of Kyle, you don't have to go forward. You can always go, it would be great. Let's go back to the 70s or let's go back to the 50s and tell some stories back then. And then also you get to keep Alan Scott in the mix,
Yes, you do.
right? It's just like, oh, for the next 4 years, we're going to tell stories about this guy set in this era. And by the way, it doesn't mean there's no time travel. It doesn't mean you can't jump forward to the present day for 5 minutes and interact with one or more of these other guys, right? It's just everybody wants it the way they want it right now all the time, and you can't.
We're on our last two.
Okay.
And we're the next one is our only Marvel entry on this list, and that was
Okay.
not by design. It was just the way the suggestions came in. So
Uh,
this is also from Miguel.
oh Christ, Daredevil. I don't know what's left with Daredevil. Um,
That is the exact opposite. Yeah, so that is the exact opposite challenge as somebody like Brother Power.
I don't know. Hmm.
So much has been done with this character, and in general, just one of the most consistently well written characters of the last, what, 40,
Yeah.
50
Has there
years?
ever been a bad take since Miller brought him up? Has anyone done anything bad with the guy since then?
I
Gee.
think people didn't like Shadowland, but,
Well, fair. That's true. Fair.
but that's
Um,
about it.
Also, Hell's Kitchen. If you've ever been to New York, you haven't probably. Hell's Kitchen ain't Hell's Kitchen like that. Okay, that's great for the comics. Hell's Kitchen is absolutely gentrified and nowhere near like that. Okay. Um,
I think in the TV show they had to have a whole explanation about how the Battle of New York destroyed Hell's Kitchen so that it was like that specifically because Hell's Kitchen is not like that.
yeah, okay, so
It's
what's
such
this?
a great name.
We talked about we talked about this with Space Ghost. Um, what is Daredevil at his core? He's more so, well, not he's essentially Marvel's Batman, not Peter Parker, right?
Right.
Except what if Batman had no money?
What if he was poor and a little more
What if he was
mentally ill?
absolutely poor and not a genius? Um, but um,
I spoke out of turn. I said Daredevil was more mentally ill. I think that's wrong.
no,
Yeah.
he has been, but he isn't always. The core parts of Daredevil are an absolute black and white sense of morality. No gray areas for Mr. Daredevil. He is very much confined to his region unless he's not. Like when he was in San Francisco, he was in San Francisco. But
Right.
he's not like a globe-trotting type of guy. He's a neighborhood hero. He's a street level guy. So Okay, here's what I do with Daredevil. It, it doesn't necessarily ignore the rest of all of what's happened. I don't know if I haven't read every iteration of Daredevil, so maybe someone's already done this. What I would do, at least for an arc, or maybe for a while, Daredevil very publicly dies. He apparently gets killed as Daredevil, clearly gets killed as Daredevil. Now,
Okay.
people who know Matt know either Matt was not Daredevil at the time or this is Matt's doing it. And what happens is within a certain range in New York, an apparently supernatural being shows up. No crime in this stretch. Don't care what you do outside. No drugs, no muggings, no none of that, or else. And what or else means is you vanish. You are gone. I don't know what that means. Maybe you're dead. We don't know. But the silhouette is Daredevil. Everyone who sees this being sees red, sees the horns, apparently can't be shot. Like we shoot at him, but they don't hit. He's moving like lightning, whatever. It's very Batmanish.
Yeah.
People keep coming to Matt. Yo, I'm being a lawyer. Nope, not me. He's lying. We all know he's lying. He is Daredevil. But
Yeah.
what he's basically done is Daredevil doesn't work as a superhero. I'm going to eventually be too old. So what I need to do now is create basically the Batman thing. I need to create in this region. This is a region of zero freaking crime. And unlike Batman, I don't put you in jail. You're just gone. So that makes it seem like you were taken to hell or someplace, right? Other than here. What is he really doing? He is imprisoning them in a private Daredevil run prison under the city. And that all these people he's catching and he's giving him his justice. They are just being imprisoned forever for their crimes by Daredevil. Now, maybe he gives them the appropriate legal sentence, like he's judge and jury. So
Hmm.
whatever you did, you're going to go in the box for the period of time that the law says you should be in the box. And if it's a murder a murder you committed, well, I'm an extremely moral Catholic man. I can't kill you, but you're going to spend life in the box, the rest of your life in the box. Um, Now, that's pretty dark, but it will give you at least 3 years of Daredevil because Matt's friends, once they find out what he's doing, are not going to be happy
They're
about any of that.
not gonna be cool with that. Who's gonna be the first guy coming after him?
I think when the Punisher gets put in the box, he's going to be upset. Okay. Like when I mean zero tolerance, I mean zero tolerance. Right. So there's going to be stories, by the way. So let's say you're a pickpocket or you were a second story thief or whatever, and you get caught by Daredevil. Well, those have prison sentences, right?
Right.
So you go in the box. And when I mean the box, I mean a black space that you don't know. What the fuck? Where am I? What is this? Right? You're in there for, let's say it was 6 months. Let's say it was 5 weeks, whatever the crime's legal punishment is, that is not death, obviously. He puts you in there and then he lets you out again. And what have you got to tell? A story. The devil
Yeah.
came and got me and put me in hell. You've been gone for 3 weeks.
Right.
Is that all? Is that all? I thought I was there for years. Because as we all know, when you're underground and you don't have a clock, you have no idea how long time is,
You have no
right?
idea.
So that's what Daredevil would do. And his friends would be very unhappy when they find out it's definitely him doing it.
Mike in the chat is calling it the Devil's Kitchen.
Devil's Kitchen sold. Yes, yes.
See, this is one of the things where I think like having, a bigger universe might give you more to have to deal with because you're explaining all that, and the first thing that I think is like, well, of course Spider-Man would have to take note of it.
Sure, people would take note of it, but you
Right.
have to know where to go, what to look for. What like people are just disappearing.
But then I feel like somebody would have to make some editorial decision would make it so that Spider-Man's going to have to try to address it, but not really, and just end up leaving it alone and never speak about it again. You know
I
what I
think
mean?
I think what would have to happen is some version of an intervention on Matt, right? But like people would say, well, has he gone crazy? Is it like that, or is it secretly being controlled by someone or whatever? It's like, no, I'm not hurting them. I'm giving their appropriate prison sentence. Like, I know they did it. I saw them do it,
Yeah.
you know?
Okay. We're down to our last one, and
Okay.
I'm gonna give you a gift here, Jeff.
What could it
Oh
possibly?
wait, no,
Oh,
wait, no. This isn't our last one. Sorry, this is from
stop it.
Mike. This is from Mike. He just wants he wants to know how you would handle Gotham City, not Batman, just Gotham City in
Oh,
general.
GCPD or
Yeah.
whatever. I always thought that that show Gotham missed everything by not just being GCPD. Like,
Okay.
I've been trying to pitch to Marvel, they should do Code Blue. They should do Code Blue. I don't know why they haven't done Code Blue. They shouldn't have done Agents of Shield. They should have done Code Blue. The reason is no superheroes. You see what's going
Yeah.
on with the Penguin, right?
No. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Right?
The
If you
Penguin's
did
like.
GCPD, you would show the easy pitch is it's the Wire in Gotham City, right? But you
Yeah.
can't really do the Wire in Gotham City because the Gotham City has the freaking Joker in it. Has Baby Doll and Clayface in it. So Batman can't be the only person solving crimes. He can't be the only person catching any of these people. GCPD has to be able to deal with this. But you know what? They're taking hits doing it. They're getting hurt doing it. Like
Mhm.
you both show the need for Batman or someone like Batman in the GCPD, but you also show that this would be the story of GCPD going from being mostly corrupt to being mostly not corrupt. You're never going
Right.
to get a clean police force. It's not possible.
Not
But
possible. No.
but it starts as mostly corrupt and ends mostly not corrupt. And you get to see the journeys of various characters, some of whom started corrupt and ended up not being corrupt anymore, or people who started pretty clean and went, but I could get
Mm,
rich being a little bit more corrupt, like
yeah.
that, mixed in with the occasional supervillain in the sense of, let's say, a character like Ragdoll or um, what Mr. Zaitz, who's the serial killer guy,
Yeah.
right? He puts a scar on his body for every kill or whatever. People like that, where it's essentially a normal cop show or cop story, but the person you're dealing with is the KG beast or
Yeah.
somebody like that. And that's a little bit outside. It's like everybody's what if Hannibal Lecter was Bane, you know? It's like, holy shit, right? And in the background, occasionally you would do fun things like if this was a comic book, then the crossover would be we're doing something in GCPD and Batman is having a completely separate adventure. And then in this crossover book, literally he's fighting, I don't know, somebody from the League of Shadows and smashes through a wall from that fight completely randomly while we're bracing the Riddler over here. Right. And then that mixes everything up. And then he goes back to his adventure and the Riddler got away because of this bullshit. God damn it. And then we
You
have to
know
go
what?
after them.
I miss that in comics, like where something just happens in this one issue that also happens in this other issue.
Right.
But
I think
yeah.
that way you get the sense of he's a presence in their universe, and that cops would be annoyed by him. Like it's not always helpful to have Batman be involved. Not just the irrational, he's a vigilante, but like, dude, we were literally in the middle of catching someone. What are you doing, man? You know, and
Right.
all the spin out attitudes of that. Why do you support him so much, James? Blah 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 blah. And it's like when Gotham's clean, we won't need the Batman, but we definitely need him. It doesn't mean we don't have to do our jobs like that. So, and you could have people like, what's the point of us if we got these freaking Batman and Robin and Batgirl and Batwoman? All these fucking bats are all over the freaking city, you know? And it's like, because they can't be everywhere. And that is literally the definition of our job.
Right.
So saddle up or
Well,
get out.
well, like I said, we're down to our last one, and
Okay.
we're staying in Gotham City, and I'm gonna give you a gift.
My beautiful Oracle.
Barbara Gordon.
Well, I'm
You
on
can pitch
record. I
whatever you
thought
want. You can pitch her as Oracle, as Batgirl, as a
I would never
combination of
pitch her as
both.
Batgirl. I will never pitch her as Batgirl. She was the most heroic superhero ever created when she became Oracle, and DC made a huge mistake putting her back in the tights. Huge. Um, Especially after No Man's Land, where those guys busted into her house and she handled them like they were Cub Scouts, and she was
Yeah.
still in a wheelchair. Oh my God. I would just tell the stories of Oracle as if she had never got back in the chair. That's very simple. She runs Birds of Prey. She has her own adventures. She's fooling around with Dick Grayson. Maybe they're a couple, maybe they're not. It's very simple to do that story. And I would make sure that I had an advisor who would talk to me about what it's like to actually have been shot and be paralyzed from the waist down, so that I can both address that in a realistic way, but also say to people who are in that situation, here's how you can compensate. This is a person like you who was injured and theoretically had the end of their thing. I like about Barbara is I like superheroes for the most part who chose it. Barbara
Yeah.
has no superpowers. She saw Batman essentially running around being Batman, not knowing anything more about him except that guy's trying to do something. I'm going to do something too. She didn't have a
And she does
tragedy.
it. She does it on a significantly more limited budget.
True, right? But she's like, right, I'm going to help. I am going to help. Like that guy is helping. I'm going to help. Period. I have
Yeah.
no training. I have nothing. I'm not superpowers. I'm not rich. Screw it. I'm going to help. That's my superhero. And so then she gets shot by a lunatic, paralyzed from the waist down, and says, fuck it, I'm still going to help. I'm like, Jesus Christ, that's some iron will right there. Holy crap. I want her on my team. Right. So the story would be I would say she forms Birds of Prey and she reforms Birds of Prey, but she reforms it with instead of established superheroes like Huntress or Power Girl or somebody like that. She grabs the teenager new vigilantes,
Okay.
maybe a couple of people who are. I draw a distinction between outlaws and straight up criminals. There's people who sort of break the law because, and there's people who break the law for a living,
Mm-hmm.
right? She would choose the borderline person and say, stick with me, kid. You can put these skills to better use and have a better life out of it. So um, both Dick and Barbara are the better versions of Bruce Wayne.
It's
Neither of
true.
them are screwed up. Both of them are, if anything, Nightwing is a example of Bruce knowing what's wrong with him and raising a son to be not that way,
Right.
right? And Barbara is just everybody wants a daughter like Barbara motherfucking Gordon. Like everybody wants their girlfriend to be Barbara Gordon. Everybody wants her on their team. She's just that. She's the Captain America of the DCU. I love Barbara Gordon. I love Barbara. She's my favorite DC character by far. Like by far. Like it's not
And
even close.
and that's why I saved her for last.
Oh my God. They made a mistake. Now it's too late.
Geoff, we've been talking for 2.5 hours, but the time
Whatever. I
just
love
flew
you. You're
by.
awesome.
And it's great as always. Geoff Thorne is the writer of X Force. We are 5 issues in. Go catch up on it.
That's
It's
the symbol.
great.
That's the mutant symbol. That's what we do now.
And thank you to everyone who joined and gave in your suggestions. This was a great live stream as
I love
usual.
talking to
Thank,
you.
thank
Have me back whenever, man. You're awesome.
any